A woman visits a fortune teller who tells her that if she doesn't receive a ring by the beginning of spring, she will never get married. Before we begin, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Enjoy the story. Emma had always been skeptical about fate and fortune-telling, but her curiosity was piqued when she realized that everything the renowned psychic Madame Serena had predicted for her friends had actually come true. First, Sarah found out she would land her dream job, and just a few months later, she was promoted. Then, Michael, who had always been unlucky in love, met his soulmate exactly in the week the fortune teller had foreseen. Every prophecy unfolded like a meticulously written script. Intrigued yet slightly apprehensive, Emma decided she needed to hear what fate had in store for her. With sweaty palms and a racing heart, she stepped into the small room draped in deep red velvet curtains. The scent of incense filled the air, and the flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows on the walls. Madame Serena studied her in silence for a moment before extending her wrinkled hand, motioning for Emma to take a seat. With an intense gaze, she shuffled the deck and laid the cards out one by one on the table. "I see a ring," she said, her voice low and mysterious. "You will receive a ring by the start of spring. If you don't, then marriage is not in your destiny." Emma's heart turned cold. She had a boyfriend, Ethan, whom she had been with for 4 years, but he had never shown much enthusiasm for marriage. Would he propose before spring? And if he didn't, would that mean she was never meant to get married? She walked out of the small shop feeling a mix of anxiety and fear. She had never believed in fortune tellers, but Madame Serena's certainty was undeniable. The prophecy echoed in her mind like an unchangeable fate. In the days that followed, Emma couldn't shake the prediction from her thoughts. Every time she looked at Ethan, her heart wavered between hope and dread. Was he planning to propose? Or had the thought never even crossed his mind? She started looking for signs. At dinner on Saturday, he casually mentioned saving up to trade in his car, but didn't say anything about a potential engagement. On Sunday, when they passed by a jewelry store at the mall, he didn't even glance at the gleaming window displays. With each little detail, her anxiety grew like a suffocating shadow. One night, as they lay in bed, Emma could no longer hold back the question that had been tormenting her. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice heavy with hesitation, "have you ever thought about marriage?" He slowly turned his head to look at her, his brown eyes reflecting a mix of surprise and indifference. "Marriage?" he repeated, letting out a soft chuckle. "I think it's overrated. A signed piece of paper doesn't change anything. In the end, it's just an expensive event to impress other people." Emma felt her stomach twist, her chest tightened, and for a moment, she had the sensation of falling into an abyss. "But you never imagined walking down the aisle with me? Having a special day, surrounded by the people we love?" Ethan sighed, as if the topic was an unnecessary inconvenience. "I don't need a wedding to be with you. I think we can just keep things the way they are. Maybe in the future we could live together. But a ceremony, rings, all that formality? What's the point?" Emma didn't respond. She just felt the emptiness spreading inside her. No matter how much she tried to ignore it, at that moment, she knew something essential was missing between them. The conversation with Ethan kept echoing in her mind, making it impossible to ignore the growing unease. Needing a break, she decided to visit her parents over the weekend. Maybe the warmth of the home she grew up in and their affection would help her organize her thoughts. When she arrived, she was greeted by the familiar scent of fresh coffee and cinnamon cake, her mother's signature. Her father's warm embrace wrapped around her like a shield against the confusion she felt. Throughout Saturday, Emma noticed something that had always seemed so natural she had never really paid attention to it before: the genuine love that bound her parents together. Small gestures revealed it in subtle ways. Her father made breakfast while her mother read the newspaper on the porch. Every now and then, he would glance up at her and smile, as if her mere presence was enough to make the morning better. Later, while they were grocery shopping, they held hands like a young couple, exchanging playful jokes and laughter. Emma couldn't remember the last time Ethan had held her hand in public or looked at her with the same tenderness she saw in her parents. By late afternoon, as she helped her mother prepare dinner, she could no longer hold back the question that had been weighing on her. "Mom, how have you and Dad managed to keep your marriage so alive after all these years?" she asked, absent-mindedly stirring the sauce in the pan. Her mother smiled, as if she had been expecting that question. "Because I can't imagine my life without him," she answered simply. Emma frowned. "But how did you know you wanted to marry him? How were you so sure?" Her mother set down the knife she had been using to chop vegetables and turned to face her. "When your father proposed to me, I asked myself, can I see myself by this man's side for the rest of my life? And the answer came immediately. I couldn't live without him for the rest of my life." Emma felt a lump form in her throat. "Do you think everyone who wants to get married needs to feel that way?" "I think marriage isn't just a logical decision, Emma. It's about feeling like that person is your home, that being apart from them would be unimaginable. And you, my daughter, when you think about Ethan, do you feel like you couldn't live without him?" Those words hit her like a shockwave. Of course, she loved Ethan. But did she love him enough that she couldn't imagine her life without him? If he were to leave one day, would it feel like a vital part of her had been ripped away? And perhaps the most important question of all, did he feel that way about her? The drive home was silent. Her conversation with her mother echoed in her mind like a broken record, repeating the same question over and over. "Do you feel like you couldn't live without him?" The answer hurt more than she wanted to admit. No, she didn't. Ethan was a good man, he had qualities. But he didn't make her heart race. The passion had faded over time, and now they felt more like two people stuck in a routine. There were no spontaneous gestures of affection, no bright-eyed admiration. They were just together, and for the first time, Emma felt the crushing weight of monotony. The next night, she decided to face it head-on. She went out to dinner with Ethan, and in the middle of their conversation, she brought up marriage again, but this time with no sugarcoating. "You really don't think about it at all?" He let out an exasperated sigh and rolled his eyes, as if she were nagging him about something trivial. "Marriage is just a ritual, a bunch of money wasted on a party and paperwork. I don't see why it's such a big deal. Maybe one day we'll make things official, but I don't see the point in anything too flashy. What matters is that we live together, and that's it." Her heart shattered right then and there. She knew now there would be no ring before spring from the man she had been sharing her life with. A wave of frustration and sadness washed over her. How had she fooled herself for so long? How had she ignored all the signs that they were just coexisting, rather than building a future together? She took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them, a devastating clarity washed over her. "I'm sorry, Ethan," she said, looking straight into his eyes. "We can't be together anymore." He blinked, caught off guard. "What? You're breaking up with me over a party?" Emma smiled, but it was a sad smile. "I have a dream. I thought you knew that. After all, we've been together for so many years. I want to get married. I want a beautiful wedding, with the people I love surrounding me. You don't want that. And if we don't share the same dreams, our relationship won't last." Ethan opened his mouth to respond but hesitated. He didn't look heartbroken. In fact, he looked relieved. Emma felt a tightness in her chest. For years together, and this was how it ended? No fight, no resistance, no sign that he truly cared? She stood up. "I know you'll find someone who shares your views, and I hope you'll be very happy. But I can't do this anymore." Without waiting for a reply, she grabbed her purse and walked out of the restaurant. She hurried down the sidewalk, feeling the cold night air against her skin. The moment she turned the corner, the tears started to fall. Once inside her car, she broke down completely. She cried for the wasted years, for the illusion of a love that was never enough, and for the terrifying uncertainty of what lay ahead. Spring was just days away, and now she didn't even have a boyfriend. The fortune teller's prophecy felt more real than ever. In the days that followed, Emma threw herself into her routine, trying to drown out the pain of the breakup. But no matter how much she tried to distract herself, Madame Serena's words haunted her. Every morning, the calendar seemed to mock her, counting down the days until spring. The fear grew inside her like a suffocating shadow. What if Madame Serena was right? What if she didn't get a ring by then? Would that mean she'd be alone for the rest of her life? In a moment of desperation, Emma did something she never imagined she would do. She sat on her couch, phone in hand, and downloaded every dating app she could find. She hastily created profiles, picked out old photos, and started swiping right frantically, like her life depended on it. But she didn't stop there. She scoured her social media, searching for ex-boyfriends from high school. Was any of them still single? Could a casual reunion rekindle something from the past? Desperation had become a dangerous fuel. That night, trying to seem carefree, she agreed to go bowling with her coworkers, as they did every week. But Emma was distant, absent, lost in her own thoughts. "Are you okay?" Claire, her closest colleague, asked. Emma forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." What she didn't realize was that someone was watching her closely. Someone who saw her far beyond what she could see herself. At the corner of the bowling alley, sitting with a beer in hand, was Daniel, her boss. He had always harbored feelings for her but kept his distance, knowing she was in a relationship. He admired her. She was beautiful, enchanting, delicate, kind. Everyone knew about his feelings. Everyone except Emma. She never noticed. Now, seeing her so vulnerable, struggling to hide her sadness, he felt an irresistible urge to step closer. When the game ended and Emma said goodbye to her coworkers, he followed her to the exit. "Let me drive you home." "No need, I'll walk." "I insist." She hesitated for a moment but gave in. She got into the car and let out a heavy sigh. On the way, Daniel broke the silence. "Do you want to talk about it?" Emma looked out the window, watching the city lights blur past. For some reason, she felt the urge to be honest. "I broke up with my boyfriend." He was quiet for a moment before responding, his voice filled with sincerity. "If you need anything at all, just let me know." Emma smiled softly. "Thank you, Daniel." As she stepped out of the car and walked into her house, he closed his eyes and smiled to himself. His heart pounded, and one thought consumed his mind. This was the chance he had always waited for. Emma, however, noticed nothing. She was too busy staring at her phone, where match notifications from the dating app and messages from old acquaintances popped up one after another. Tomorrow, her search would begin. Time was running out. The next morning, Emma woke up determined. There were only a few weeks left until the start of spring, and if the fortune teller was right, that deadline meant everything. Her plan was simple: find someone who could give her a ring. She spent the day exchanging messages with old acquaintances and new matches from the apps. Some were enthusiastic, others were too forward. Deep down, Emma knew she was forcing an impossible situation, but she ignored that thought. During lunch, Daniel asked her to grab a bite with him. "Not today," she said quickly. "I already have plans." He raised an eyebrow, curious, but didn't press the matter. Her first date was with Brian, an ex-boyfriend from high school. They arranged to meet at a quiet bakery downtown. When Emma arrived, she found a man in a perfectly tailored suit with a polite smile. For a brief moment, a flicker of hope sparked inside her, but it died just as quickly. Brian was kind but direct. "Emma, you still look amazing, but I'm married. I love my wife, and I'm very happy. I just wanted to see you because I've always had a lot of affection for you." His words landed in her chest like a heavy stone. Emma smiled, pretending she wasn't affected, and wished him happiness. But inside, she could taste the bitterness of disappointment. That night, she turned down an invitation from her friends and set up a date with a guy named Derek, whom she had met on the app. He seemed friendly and witty in their messages, so she tried to stay optimistic. She chose a busy restaurant to feel safe. When she arrived, she spotted Derek waiting for her, a handsome, confident man. But after just a few minutes of conversation, she realized he wasn't actually interested in getting to know her. "So, is your place nearby?" he asked after half an hour of superficial small talk. Emma forced a smile and gripped her glass a little tighter. "I'm not sure I understand your question," he smirked. "I'm just saying we don't have to waste time here if you'd rather go somewhere more private." Disappointment hit her like an icy wave. She finished her drink, paid her share of the bill, and walked out without looking back. When she got home, she kicked off her shoes and collapsed onto the couch. The silence of the room seemed to echo her frustration. She felt pathetic, chasing after something that couldn't be forced, trying to find someone just to ease the desperation that damned prophecy had planted in her mind. The tears came without warning. "I'm going to be alone," she whispered to herself. "I'm never going to get married." Reality felt painfully clear now. Time was running out, and all she had found so far were closed doors and empty encounters. The dream of marriage, of building a life with someone who truly loved her, was slipping through her fingers, and there was nothing she could do about it. The next morning, Emma woke up with swollen eyes from crying so much. The night before had been a turning point. For the first time, she felt the real weight of her choices and the emptiness she had been trying so desperately to fill. She got up, took a long shower, and tried to reorganize her thoughts. For the first time in weeks, she avoided looking at the calendar. Spring was coming, but she decided she wouldn't let that prediction control her life anymore. At work, she kept quiet, focused on her tasks. But Daniel noticed. He always noticed. At lunchtime, he appeared beside her desk, offering a small smile. "What do you say we go out tonight? I think you could use a little distraction." Emma hesitated. Part of her wanted to say no, but then she remembered how she had been feeling over the past few days. Lost, frustrated, hopeless. Maybe a fun night out was exactly what she needed. "All right," she replied, forcing a smile. That night, Daniel took her to an amusement park. At first, Emma found it odd. It wasn't exactly the kind of place she usually went. But as the night went on, something inside her began to shift. They played prize machine games, laughed as they crashed into each other in the bumper cars, shared an enormous cotton candy, and even made a bet on who would scream the loudest on the roller coaster. For the first time in a long while, Emma felt light. By the end of the night, as they walked through the park, illuminated by colorful lights, she looked at Daniel differently. He had been there all these years, always present, always thoughtful. But she had never really seen him beyond the caring boss and the dependable coworker. "I feel like I haven't really seen you in a long time," she admitted, smiling. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean? We see each other every day." She shook her head. "Not like this." Daniel held her gaze for a moment before smiling. "Then I guess my new mission is to make sure you smile more." Emma laughed, a warm feeling spreading through her chest. Maybe, without realizing it, a new path was opening right in front of her. Days passed, and without even noticing, Emma's life started to change. She no longer looked at the calendar in desperation. The dating apps sat forgotten on her phone. The suffocating weight of Madame Serena's prophecy slowly faded, replaced by something unexpected, lightness. And at the heart of this change was Daniel. They started going out more often. At first, just as co-workers enjoying good moments together. Then, as friends who truly enjoyed each other's company. Each outing felt natural, no pressure, no unrealistic expectations. Just moments of genuine happiness. On Valentine's night, Emma felt a pang of melancholy. It wasn't that she wanted Ethan back, but the day had always been special to her. While everyone else celebrated love, she couldn't help but feel a little out of place. By late afternoon, Daniel appeared at her office door. "I know this day can be a little tough for some people," he said with a small smile. "So, if you want some company, I promise I'll make an amazing dinner." Emma hesitated for a second, but then she accepted. When she arrived at his place, she was greeted by the delicious aroma of a freshly prepared meal. The table was set with care, and the soft glow of candles created a warm, intimate atmosphere. "You didn't have to do all this?" she said, surprised. "I wanted to," he replied simply. They had dinner, laughing and chatting effortlessly. When they were done, Daniel picked up the remote and grinned. "I have a movie for us to watch." Emma chuckled. "Which one?" As the screen lit up, her heart stopped for a second. It was the movie, her favorite, the one she watched every year on Valentine's Day. She turned to Daniel, eyes wide. "It can't be," he laughed. "I watch this movie every year on this date. It's my favorite." A shiver ran down her spine. They spent the rest of the night watching the film, laughing at the scenes they both knew by heart, stealing glances at each other during lines they had memorized over the years. And that's when Emma realized this wasn't just friendship. Something inside her had changed. She didn't know exactly when or how it had happened, but the truth was there, pulsing in her chest. She was falling for Daniel. After that night, Emma could no longer ignore what she felt. Her heart reacted differently when he was around. But along with that realization came fear. What if she was fooling herself again? What if he only saw her as a friend? In the days that followed, being near him felt different. Before, Daniel had just been her thoughtful boss, her reliable friend, the man who knew when she needed a strong coffee or a light-hearted conversation to take her mind off things. But now, every interaction carried a quiet tension, a meaning hidden in the details. She started noticing things. The way he leaned in slightly when they talked, how his eyes seemed to study her, as if trying to read her thoughts. She also noticed how her own body reacted, how her heartbeat picked up when he said her name, how a shiver ran down her spine when his hand brushed her shoulder in a casual touch. One day, as they worked on a report together, Emma caught herself staring at him without realizing it. She took in the sharp lines of his jaw, the way his lips curled into a faint smile as he read something on the screen. Daniel turned at that exact moment and caught her gaze. "What?" he asked, a knowing smirk playing on his lips. Emma blinked, feeling her face grow warm. "Nothing, I just..." He raised his eyebrows, waiting for her to finish. She quickly looked away. "Forget it." Daniel didn't push, but the smile on his lips never faded. That night, when she got home, Emma felt restless. She turned on the TV, tried reading a book, but her mind kept circling back to the same place. To him, to the moments they had shared, to the growing feeling that fate was trying to show her something she had been refusing to see. Spring was approaching. The prophecy's deadline was almost here. That Friday, Daniel invited her to dinner at an elegant restaurant downtown. "Is there a special occasion?" Emma asked as they took their seats. He smiled. "No reason. I just wanted to celebrate how incredible it's been spending this time with you." Her heart pounded a little harder. Throughout dinner, their conversation flowed as effortlessly as always, but Emma sensed something different in the air. Daniel seemed nervous, fidgeting with his napkin, looking at her in a way he never had before. After dinner, they strolled through the city park. The cool night air and soft lights created a magical atmosphere. When they reached the bridge over the lake, Daniel stopped and turned to her. "Emma." The way he said her name made her chest tighten. "I can't hide this anymore," he continued, stepping closer. "I'm completely in love with you. Truth is, I always have been." Emma felt the air leave her lungs. "Daniel." He gave her a small, almost nervous smile, and before she could say anything else, he dropped to one knee. Her heart nearly burst out of her chest. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. When he opened it, a delicate silver ring with a tiny diamond at its center gleamed in the soft glow of the park lights. Emma covered her mouth with both hands. Her chin trembled. The moment she saw the ring, the fortune teller's words echoed in her mind, and she began to cry. There he was, the man of her life. The ring didn't symbolize an engagement, nor was it a proposal for marriage, but it was a ring, and it was before spring arrived. In that instant, she understood. What truly mattered wasn't chasing some desperate deadline. It was realizing that she had been stuck in a relationship that had become routine, where there were no longer acts of love, no laughter, no excitement. Her future was never meant to be there. And once she had left that part of her life behind, she had finally opened herself up to what was really meant for her. Someone who made her laugh, who treated her with care and attention, who shared her dreams and goals, and who was standing right in front of her, surprising her in the most unexpected way. Tears filled her eyes, but they weren't from fear or despair. They were tears of relief, of happiness, of gratitude for allowing herself to find something real. Daniel held her hand gently and spoke in a soft voice. This ring is to symbolize what I feel for you, to remind you that I'm here, that I want to build something with you, at our own pace. But most of all, I need to know, will you be my girlfriend? Emma felt the world spin around her, and for the first time in a long while, she had no doubts. She smiled through her tears and whispered, yes. And then, under the soft city lights and the shimmering reflection of the lake, they sealed the moment with a deep, passionate kiss. The days that followed were unlike anything Emma had ever experienced. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt whole. Daniel was her certainty. There were no doubts, no insecurities, no desperate feelings, only the pure, effortless joy of being with someone who truly made her happy. The ring he gave her became a sort of talisman, not because of what the fortune teller had said, but because every time she looked at it, she was reminded of what truly mattered: love, partnership, and the choice to be with someone who made her happy every single day. Spring arrived, bringing with it a fresh start. Emma and Daniel shared unforgettable moments, spontaneous trips, cozy home-cooked dinners filled with laughter, lazy afternoons watching their favorite movies. Every day with him became a precious new memory. Their relationship blossomed with a lightness she had never known before. There were no doubts, no hesitations, no fears. Daniel made her laugh on hard days, supported her decisions, and, more than anything, showed her in countless small ways just how much he cared. He held her hand while driving, made her coffee without her needing to ask, and looked at her as if she were the best part of his day. Time passed, and their love only grew stronger. Then, exactly 1 year after that night on the bridge, Daniel took her out for a special dinner. Emma already had a feeling something was about to happen. He was even more nervous than the first time. After dinner, he led her back to the same park, to the same bridge, under the same soft lights reflecting on the lake. But this time, when Daniel knelt down, the box he pulled from his pocket was not just a symbol of commitment. "Emma," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "a year ago, I gave you a ring to show you how much I wanted to be by your side. Tonight, I'm giving you another one to ask you to stay with me forever. Will you marry me?" Emma felt her heart burst inside her chest. As she thought back to the past, to the fear she once had of spending her life alone, she couldn't help but smile at the irony. Fate had never been forcing anything upon her. It had simply been waiting for her to realize she was in the wrong place, living a life she wasn't meant for. Now, she had been given the chance to choose the right path. With eyes shining and her heart overflowing with happiness, Emma cupped Daniel's face in her hands and answered without hesitation. Yes, 1,000 times yes. They were married a few months later in a beautiful ceremony, exactly as she had always dreamed. Surrounded by the people she loved, Emma walked down the aisle, knowing, without a doubt, that she had finally found true love. And as she stood there, looking into Daniel's eyes, she remembered her mother's words and felt an unshakable certainty. She couldn't imagine her life without him by her side. If you enjoyed this video, let us know in the comments. Your opinion is very important to us. Don't forget to subscribe. A big hug, and see you in the next video.